Life as We Knew It, Chapter 14, page 219. October 14th. Matt still goes to the post office every Friday to find out if there's any news. He came in while Mom and I were washing clothes at the kitchen sink. He gestured to me and I followed him into the pantry. "I have bad news," he said. "Megan's on the dead list." That's what they have now, the dead list. If you find out someone is dead, you write their name on the list. Just the local people, of course, since there's no way of knowing if anybody in the rest of the world has died. I guess I didn't say anything because Matt kept talking. "Her mother is on the list, too." "What?" I said. "Why?" "I'm just telling you what I know," he said. "They were both on the list. I didn't see their names last week, but that doesn't mean anything. You know how the list is." "Megan's dead," I said. It's funny how weird that sounded. Megan's dead. The world is dying. Megan is dead. I asked at the post office, but there were only a couple of guys there, and neither one knew anything, Matt said. "Lots of people are dying. It's getting harder to keep track." "Megan wanted to die," I said, "but I don't think her mother did." "People aren't necessarily choosing anymore," Matt said. "Anyway, I thought you should know. I wonder if I cry, whether my tears would be gray." October 15th. I got up this morning and realized Reverend Marshall would know what happened to Megan and her mother. I told Mom where I was going, and she asked if I wanted Matt to come along. I said no, I'd be fine. Actually, I didn't care if I was going to be fine or not. What difference does it make? It took me a half hour to get to Reverend Marshall's church, and by the time I got there, I was wheezing. I don't know how Matt and John are managing outdoors. I felt like ice, and I was glad to find the church had heat. There were a few people praying in the church. I haven't seen anyone other than family since the library closed. It felt strange seeing people, hardly more than skeletons, really. I had to remind myself how to speak, how to ask questions, how to say thank you. But I managed, and someone told me Reverend Marshall was in his office. I knocked on his office door and went in. "I'm here about Megan Wayne," I said. "I was her best friend." "Her best friend on earth," Reverend Marshall said. I didn't have the energy to argue theology with him, so I just nodded. "She's dead," I said, like he wouldn't know it, "and her mother, too. I thought maybe you could tell me what happened." "God took them," he said. "I pray for their souls." "Megan's soul is just fine," I said. "Her mother's, too. How exactly did God take them?" Reverend Marshall looked at me like I was a mosquito he wanted to swat. "It's not our place to question God's decisions," he said. "I'm not questioning anyone except you," I said. "What happened?" "God chose the moment of Megan's death," he said. "What the earthly cause was, we'll never know. Her mother summoned me one morning and we prayed over Megan's remains. She asked me to bury Megan in their backyard, but the ground was frozen and I knew I couldn't do it alone. I went back to the church to ask for help, and when we returned to the house, we found Mrs. Wayne had hung herself." "Oh, God," I said. "I suppose she'd felt we'd bury the two of them together that way," Reverend Marshall said. "But of course, we couldn't touch her impure remains. We took Megan to the churchyard and buried her there, if you want to say goodbye to her." I'd said goodbye to Megan a long time ago, and I couldn't bear to be in that man's company a moment longer. I said no and turned around to leave, but as soon as I did, I realized there was something that was bothering me. I turned back and stared at him. Reverend Marshall had never been overweight, and he wasn't now, but he hadn't lost any weight. "You're eating," I said. "Your congregation is starving, and you're eating. Do you make them give you their food?" "My congregation chooses to bring me food," he said. "I merely accept what they offer." "You're despicable," I said, and I don't know which one of us was more surprised that I even knew the word. "I don't believe in hell, so I'm not going to say I hope you end up there. I hope you're the last person living on earth. I hope the whole world dies before you, and you're left here healthy and well-fed and alone. Then you'll know what Mrs. Wayne felt. Then you'll know what impure really is." "I'll pray for you," he said, "as Megan would have wished me to." "Don't bother," I said. "I don't want any favors from your God." I guess people heard me because a couple of men came in and escorted me out. I didn't put up any resistance. Frankly, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I biked over to Megan's house. The front door was wide open. The house was so cold I could see my breath. I was scared I'd find Megan's mom, but her body was gone. The house had been ransacked, but that's to be expected. Whenever a house is deserted, people come in and take everything that can possibly be used. I went up to Megan's bedroom. Her bed was still there, so I sat down and thought about what she'd been like when we first became friends. I remembered fights with her and going to the movies and that stupid science project we worked on together in 7th grade. I thought about Becky, how Megan, Sammy, and I would visit her and how we'd laugh, even though Becky was so ill and we were so frightened. I sat on Megan's bed until I couldn't bear it any more. When I got home, I went straight to the pantry and closed the door. I guess Mom wasn't worried I'd eat anything because she left me alone in there until she needed to get food out for supper. It made me sick to eat, but I ate anyway. Starvation was Megan's way out, not mine. I'll live. Will live. I will never make Mom face what Mrs. Wayne faced. My existence is the only gift I have left to give her, but it will have to do. October 18th. I dreamed about Megan last night. I was walking into homeroom and I realized it was my 7th grade homeroom. And there was Megan and she was talking with Becky. I got very confused. Is this heaven? I asked. I hated 7th grade, and the very idea that it was heaven was upsetting. Megan laughed. This is hell, she said. Can't you tell them apart yet? I woke up then. It was funny sharing the kitchen with Mom. I feel like she knows what I'm dreaming, like even my thoughts aren't private anymore. But she slept through my dream. I guess she has dreams of her own. October 21st. Matt came home from the post office today and said unless they had volunteers, they were going to have to close. So he's volunteered to work there on Fridays. Why bother? John asked. We're not going to hear from Dad. We don't know that, Mom said. I think working at the post office is a good idea. We all should be doing more than we are. It's not good for us to sit around and do nothing. We need to be out, doing things for other people. We need to have a reason to be alive. I rolled my eyes. I bring in kindling and visit Mrs. Nesbit and wash our clothes and clean Horton's litter. I mean, that's my life. Sitting in the kitchen with Mrs. Nesbit, with neither of us saying a word, is the high point of my day. All right, said Mom, you don't have to say anything. Who, me? John and I said simultaneously, which really was pretty funny. This isn't fun for any of us, Mom said. Matt, I'm glad you'll be working at the post office. Johnny, Miranda, do whatever you want. I'm past caring. There's a part of me that almost wishes she meant it, but most of me is scared that maybe she really did mean it. October 24th. The temperature was 17 this morning, which practically constitutes a heat wave nowadays. If you looked up at the sky hard enough, you could almost make out the sun. Indian summer, Mom said, when the thermometer reached 29. No, I mean it. I bet if the ash weren't so thick, this would be Indian summer. We keep the thermostat at 50 degrees, so it's always cold. I figured I might never see 29 degrees again. I'm going skating, I said. The pond's been frozen for over a month by now. Mom, are your skates still in your closet? I suppose so, she said. Be careful, Miranda. Don't take any chances with the ice breaking. I won't, I said, but I was so excited I hardly cared what she said. Mom's shoe size and mine are close enough that I knew her skates would fit me fairly well. I went upstairs and found her skates in no time. I'd forgotten how beautiful ice skates are. I haven't been to Miller's Pond since I stopped swimming. I spend a lot of time in the woods around our house, but this was the longest I'd walked in them in months. The path was covered with dead leaves, but I didn't have any trouble following it. The strangest thing about the walk was how quiet things were. I'm really used to quiet by now. No TV, no computer, no car, no noise. But this was the first time I'd noticed how the woods were quiet too. No birds, no insects, no squirrels rustling around, no animals scurrying away at the sound of me crunching the leaves. I guess all the animals have left town. I hope Kansas lets them in. I could see from a distance that there was someone already skating. I had a rush of excitement. For one totally ridiculous moment, I thought it was Dan. But as I got closer, I could see whoever he was, he actually knew how to skate. I stood still for a few moments and watched as the skater landed double axels. For a second, I thought I should just go away, but I was too excited. I practically ran the rest away of the pond to see if I could be right, if it really could be Brandon Ulrich.